Welcome back. This week, as I teased a couple of weeks ago, we are talking about It Chapter 2. Now, I asked the only person in my life that I could think of that would do this film justice to help me with this review, and that is Sarah Banham. She is obsessed with it and the whole franchise. I don't think I know anyone else who loves it as much as she does, so I had no choice but to ask her because, who else am I going to ask? Let's be honest. We talk about everything about it and comparing it to the old ones, to the book, mainly to the original movie, I will say that. But yeah, hope you enjoy. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Don't look like It Chapter 2. So where do we start?
Okay, right. Well, this is one of my all-time favourite movies or books ever. The delightful Stephen King wrote
This
it.
is why I needed you on.
Yeah. And I'm pleased that you asked me. I'd have been sitting in a corner crying if you hadn't asked me.
I don't think I could have asked anyone else who would know more about it than you do.
Okay, just to put this all in context, I am one of those people who watch the film, then read the book. So I'm one of those people that people hate. However, on this one, I did read the book partially and then watch the original film, which was back in the 90s, early 90s, and loved it, studied it, probably a little bit more than I ought to have, then read the book completely. And it's a massive, thick, doorstop of a book. And then when this film, the new one, came up, I was probably a little bit too excited. But
I think you've been waiting for the Chapter 2 version of it since Chapter 1 was also released and even mentioned that it would even happen. Yeah. They said, we're going to do a Chapter 1, and you were so excited for both.
I must admit, okay, just as an aside, at the very end of Chapter 1, which is a almost 3-hour film, I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, we've got to do the adults yet. What's happening at that point? I thought, oh, right, okay, it's going to be in 2 separate films. When's that coming out? And at that point, they hadn't made it yet, so I've been waiting every day for 2 years, and it's finally out.
It was because the original was put together, wasn't it? They did the adults and the children sort of in one.
It was a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
It's a TV movie.
But they did it mainly. I have watched the original.
I think you were probably forced to, weren't you?
I've watched it a couple of times, and one through choice, I think. And and yeah, as far as I can remember, the original one was done from the beginning, from the adults with flashbacks all the way through of the children. Yes. Whereas the new one, they did all of the children stuff in one movie, and then they've done a second movie as the adults.
Yeah, with the occasional flashback of children.
Which I think is helpful.
Yes, and it actually works better that way, I think. However, from what we're about to say on this movie, the audiences for both movies were quite different, because in the 90s, and it was a TV movie, so there was going to be a specific way of acting and being, whereas now you can get away with a whole lot more. You would never have been able to have children swearing, that kind of thing, back then, but now obviously that's okay. And also nowadays the certificate of being able to watch certain films at certain ages are different, and the effects, the special effects, we've got so much more now than we would have had back then.
I do think that splitting them up and having one film with the children and then one film with the adults, for me, definitely worked better. Like you said, I don't know as much as whether that's because of my age. So when the original came out, I didn't grow up with the original. Mm-hmm. I think it came out a year before I was born. So actually, sorry, whoever's listening who makes them feel old by hearing that. But I think I think the original came out then. And so when I saw the original, I was a little bit older. And then I saw obviously the new one, and then it's Chapter 2. So me growing up with the story of it would have more likely have been technically with this new one, not because I'm growing up now, but because we expect so much more from film now. We expect so much more from different things, and for me, I don't feel like the old one hit the mark for me in that respect. I get that, yeah. But that might just also be because there's a lot of films from different eras that I love, but also some that I just don't feel hit the mark anymore because they're not the same.
We've moved on. That's what
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in.
So I don't know whether that's why I feel the new ones work better in that way, or whether I do just really like the fact that they split it up and made it a little bit longer. Because obviously the two films for this one, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, are a good 2 hour and 40-minute film each.
Easily.
Whereas obviously the original was 3 hours
In one go.
So, you know, they've made it longer, they've been able to develop it a bit further, and I do think it's maybe just a more interesting way of doing it.
More interesting way of doing it.
Pun
So
unintended.
I've written down some things I wanted to go over. So there's some comparisons between the book, the 90s film, and the current chapters 1 and 2. Now, they've changed the career for Eddie in the current movie from the TV movie, which was a limo driver. I don't recall what it was in the book, but he was a limo driver company owner. And he's now a risk assessor, and the character, it really suits him because the character, you know, is so over the top when it comes to everything's got to be just right, or it might be wrong, or it might be wrong, or it might be make him ill, or it might be this, or it might be that. So a risk assessor is a much better idea for him.
I did think that. I don't remember the originals with what their careers were necessarily, but when they said that, I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, it's more in keeping with his personality. Also, Beverly, her fashion career was shown more in the original movie, but in the current movie, it's in a different way. Whereas before, you saw her in the factory, you saw people at sewing machines and stuff like that. But now I think there's probably just one or two mentions of it. Plus the, during the Jade of the Orient meal, I think Bill had said to her, so whatever her spouse's name is, something, and Mar's shoes. Oh, my wife's got those. So that's how we know it's a fashion thing. Whereas I don't actually think we knew that. Any other way of knowing that from
I think it was very understated.
Really was.
Unless you really pick up on it, it wasn't something that was a massive thing. But it wasn't really a big plot point, to be honest.
No, it's just, I think it was just to show that they've all gone off to do something really successful, and they're all really successful in all of their careers, except for Mike, who's still in Derry. Also, gosh, the adult and children casting was amazing. I think this time around they've done so well. I mean, they obviously had a bigger budget than the 90s movie, and also a lot of the people that were in this weren't even born back then. So there's a whole different set of talent out there now. But another comparison between the 90s movie and now is that I thought Beverly had way more character as a child and an adult, but as a child, Beverly had way more character. Now she had, she had more character. She had more sass. She was,
more interesting.
Yeah, but like so much sass, because in the original film, you do see her smoking in the current film, and she goes on to be an adult and she smokes. These tiny little character traits, these are the things that I'm interested in. But in the original film, no, there was nothing like that at all. She was a fairly, dare I say, irritating character. But in this one, she was just full of sass, and she held her own, which was really nice, I thought.
Like you said, I do think that the casting was very good. I don't know if you were about to say this, but I do really like a lot of their adult versions, because obviously we all saw the chapter 1 with the children in it. When was that? Last year or the year before?
2 years
ago.
I counted the days.
Okay. You can tell who's more obsessed about it in this room. But yeah, so I really loved the child casting, and I don't think that at the time they obviously didn't know who was going to be the adults. And I think they chose so well to not only choose actors that could portray those characters really well now, rather than in the 90s, like compared to those guys, but also who could change their characterization based on what the children did. Because bearing in mind, these children did it 2 years ago, and they had their own character and versions of these characters. I mean, they're not copying the original necessarily. They are in some aspects, but they're trying to make the character their own as well. And so the adult actors had to come in and essentially match them, which I thought was fascinating, because they do that really well.
I thought that as well, really good. As I was saying about Beverly with her sass, The same was with Eddie as well. He had more sass in this one than the other movie, and his relationship with Richie was more interactive this time than it was in the other movie. I should probably compare it with the book rather than anything else, but with the other movie, I think Eddie in this one was so much more likable. Richie was actually likable in both, but in this one, he seems to have been like Pennywise. He's managed to get himself a whole other following. So some of these careers have just really, really taken off. Amazing.
I do think as well, so it was the Bill casting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's James McAvoy,
Yeah.
which was so good. Although I will have to admit that I'm a massive fan of James McAvoy and pretty much everything he's done. So I'm a little biased in that respect. And I also absolutely loved the Richie casting, which was Bill Hader.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was incredible. He did so well in that role.
You're saying about Bill Denborough's role as boy and man. In the current one, they've really made Bill much more modest and humble than I think the original. In the original, it was Jonathan Brandis, the late Jonathan Brandis, and Richard Thomas, and the two of them had a way about them. But apart from the stutter, and there was a mole on their face, and that was probably because the younger actor had that. They didn't have the same maybe connection as the older Bill and the younger Bill. It just seemed this time they just had more of a connection with each other and the audience. Like really modest and really humble, and I mean it made them so likable even more.
Yeah, and they had scenes together in this one.
Yes.
Which I thought, again, I haven't seen the original in a while, so I might say things and you're going to probably correct me and go, no, that was in the original. But I don't know if that was in the original.
I don't remember it.
And I thought that was very interesting. Them, in a scene together, it was very, very good. I did really enjoy it. And like I said, with Bill Hader, I have seen him in quite a few things. I know him mainly for obviously comedy and things like that he does. And obviously Richie is quite a comedic character.
Mm-hmm.
So that really suited him to the ground. But there were also some elements of his character that were very emotional and very hard to watch, I guess, in a good way.
Yeah.
And he pulled them off so well.
Mm.
I really felt that